Look at verse 24. Gabriel tells them, 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. A lot of cool stuff is going to happen, he says. But he says 70 weeks are determined for your people and your holy city. Okay, we need to establish a few things here. Length of time. 70 weeks are established for your people. 70 weeks, this week's here is a term heptad. Heptad, it's like a term we would use like a dozen or a decade. It's a unit of 7. Unit of 7. It's first used in Scripture, and there's a Bible interpretation or study approach that says the first time a word is used. You always want to look at the first time a word is used to understand. First time this word heptad or weeks is used is back in Genesis 29. And that's the story of Jacob, who tries to get his wife Rachel, who falls in love with, works for his uncle Laban. At the end of 7 years, he works. Thinks he's going to get his wife Rachel. Uncle Laban does the old switcheroo. Instead of Rachel, he gets the older daughter, the one that's not so good to look at. He ends up getting married to her, and he said, "Hey, what's the deal?" He goes, "Well, in our country, the older daughter has to be married first. So you have to wait 7 more years. At the end of her week, then you can marry Rachel. At the end of her week is 7 years." That's where the term is first used. So we're talking about the week here is a period of 7 years. So what we have here is 70 units of 7 years. That's talked about here. 70 units of 70 years is what Gabriel gives a message to Daniel here. So 70 times 7 is 490 years. So that's the period of time we're talking about here. Gabriel says, Daniel, 490 years are determined upon your people. Now, who is the people? Who is it determined? Daniel's people. Who are Daniel's people? It's the Jews. Okay, it's the Jews. Those are Daniel's people. And who is it determined for? It's the holy city. So it's 490 years, Daniel, for your people, the Jews, and for the holy city, which is Jerusalem. That's what he's talking about here. 490 years. This is God's calendar for his people and for their holy city. Gabriel is giving him great insight into the future. What's going to happen in those 490 years? Well, he lays out these things. Finish the transgressions. And that's the end of man's rebellion. Make an end of sins. Not just the end of guilt of sins, which we have, but I mean the end of all sinning. There won't be any sinning anymore. To make reconciliation for iniquity. We know that this was made possible through Jesus Christ on Calvary. But remember, the Jews rejected Messiah. They rejected Messiah. And he says to bring in everlasting righteousness. A new order brought in by Messiah. To seal up vision and prophecy. This is the fulfillment of all prophecy. Ends the final stage of human history. And then to anoint the most holy. And taken at its most simple understanding, it's talking about the temple, to anoint the temple again, the new temple. So we know that all these things haven't happened yet. All of this stuff is yet to come. This is future. 490 years, though, we know that's past. So what's going on here? How do you equate this? Let's look and see. Verse 25, he explains how it's broken up. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. 7 and 62 is 69, right? The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublesome times. So how is it divided? 70 weeks are divided essentially into 2 parts. You have the 69 weeks, the first, the 7 and 62. That's 69 weeks, which is, as we know, using our understanding, that's 483 years. From a decree until the Messiah, the Prince, appears. Well, that leaves 1 week, 1 7-year period that is yet to come. So there's going to be a pronouncement. Going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem, 483 years will pass. That's the starting point. The command to restore and build Jerusalem. And we know, again, in studying our scripture, that there were several pronouncements for the Jews to return back to their land after captivity. But only one given by King Xerxes to Nehemiah in Nehemiah chapter 2 specifically was to go back and rebuild the city. The previous commands had been to go back and rebuild the temple. So he says, go back and rebuild the city. That took place in 445 BC. Artaxerxes made this decree, giving Nehemiah permission and safe passage and supplies to return to Jerusalem, rebuild the temple, or rather rebuild the city and the walls. Now, there's been some archaeological discoveries in the old capital of Shushan from the Babylonian period. This guy, Sir Henry Rawlinson, determined that, and they kept very, very detailed records. The Medo-Persians did. And he found out that this order was actually given March 14th, 445 BC. There's a record of it, this pronouncement by Artaxerxes to allow Nehemiah to go back. So if you start from that point, we know the beginning point, and we know 483 years until this pronouncement of Messiah the Prince. If you use the calendar that the Jews used this time, it's a 360-day calendar that they use. Now follow me here. This is where it gets a little complicated. So from the point of the decree, 483 years would pass from the time of the command to the appearance of Messiah. Using a 360-day per year calendar, times those 483 years, you come up with 173,880 days from the time that Xerxes gave his command until Daniel said Messiah the Prince would come on the scene. 173,880 days. Why don't you guys put up that chart? You have that back there? Okay. Kind of see it laid out there so you can follow. So you count out 173,880 days on the calendar. That brings you to March 14th, from March 14th, 445 BC. You add those days and you arrive at April 6th, 32 AD. What happened April 6th, 32 AD? We know as the triumphal entry of Christ into Jerusalem. Just as was prophesied, exactly to the day. Recall what Jesus said on that day of the triumphal entry when he wept over Jerusalem? He looked down on the city, exactly the day that was prophesied that he was going to be returning, the Messiah. He said, if you had known, even you especially, in this your day, the things that make for your peace. They failed to recognize that day, even though it had been laid out for them here perfectly. And this is the only occasion in Jesus' ministry where he allowed himself to be proclaimed and worshipped as a crown prince, as a Messiah. So what happens? There's 69 weeks, right, that we know has gone by. Now there's one 7-week period, or week of years, that is yet to take place. Verse 26 says, after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end of it shall be with a flood. Until the end of the war, desolations are determined. So after that time, after Messiah is proclaimed, he's cut off. Messiah shall be crucified, shall be killed. We know that took place. But it says not for himself. Jesus, he who knew no sin, took the sin of the world upon himself. He didn't die for himself, he died for us. And then it says, the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So Jesus Messiah, he comes on the scene as was prophesied. He's cut off. He takes the sin of the world upon himself. And Jesus also prophesied that the whole city, the temple, would be destroyed. Not a single stone would be left, one upon another. And we know that in 70 AD, 40 years after Jesus was resurrected, after years of rebellion and skirmishes, Emperor Nero of Rome had enough. And he sent Titus Vespasian to destroy the city and the temple, utterly destroy Jerusalem, effectively ending temple worship in Jerusalem. And it says here in verse 26, the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary with a flood. An overwhelming army destroys Jerusalem. the people of the Prince who is to come, the Prince who is